I'm going to respond to two of the burning questions from the last session because they're related. Participants noted that when we employ the design hunt and the thinking routines, that there are immediate outcomes, and people wondered how we might build on those outcomes from using the design hunt and parts, purposes, complexities through questioning and extending students' thinking. Then, secondly, what else can we do to build on those outcomes to foster long-term dispositions or habits? There are many ways to extend student thinking through questioning. Noticing and naming is a great beginning to foster this curiosity. Objects elicit questions because once you look closely at the parts, you begin to wonder what their purposes are and how they work together to function. You can encourage students to come up with their own questions around the object or topic. I've added a resource from Project Zero's Artful Thinking that might help you get started with creative questions. Why is always a great place to start. What if works as well. Using open-ended sentence starters can get students off on the right track. This methodology would work well with both younger students or ones that are newer to this type of thinking, and we often use it in our introductory classes to set the tone for our students who are new to design and making. You should also feel free to hack the language of the thinking routine, parts, purposes, and complexities, as I shared in the introductory video for this session. I've also used parts, purposes, and puzzles, or what do you notice, and what are you wondering with younger learners. Use the language that works best for your students and helps them become comfortable asking questions about what they're noticing. There were questions about how we might make this close looking and asking questions into a habit of mind. As Coach Rachel wrote to one of her team members in a discussion post, quote, "The repeated use of the parts, purposes, complexity routine will help the thinking to become a pattern of behavior they will adapt to other areas of their lives," end quote. If you repeatedly use the thinking routines, you will start to see this type of thinking become a habit of mind for your students. In addition to using different routines, and there are more to come in this course, building dispositions takes modeling by the teacher, space, time, reflection using documentation incorporating the language of thinking, and other cultural forces in your classroom. It's hard in schools, particularly during those times we feel stressed to march through content and coverage, to think about slowing down and looking closely. But you can do many different things to encourage your students to build this habit of mind. At the elementary level, this might mean that you have a corner of the room where some interesting objects live, and encourage your students to touch and feel and wonder about them. You could start a board or have a space where students can have access to Post-its and markers. You can encourage them to write down whatever questions they have about literally anything, and periodically you could cull through those and even base units of inquiry on some of them. You could use objects that they use every day, like pencils or crayons, to wonder about. How were they made? Where were they made? What are they made of? And who makes them? These amazing images are from our coach Jana's classroom. I've attached a great resource from another Project Zero project, Out of Eden Learn, which may provide some ideas about how you could do this with your students. You can model curiosity. I try to have my own passion project going in the classroom, whether it's something I'm currently making or one that I have made in the summer when I have a little more time. Last year, I took a complicated remote-controlled toy apart in order to make it accessible for a child with fine motor issues. I had never surface mount soldered before, and I didn't even know that that was the thing you could do. But I watched YouTube during free periods and after school until I successfully soldered the wires from the switch adapter to the circuit board. My students would ask what I was doing and kept coming back to see how far along I was. For older students, you can ask them to write their own questions about content, whether it be for an English or social studies reading, or about a science or math lesson or homework assignment. Difficult at first for students, this quickly shifts as they get used to doing it. In our entrepreneurship class, we ask students to reflect on the readings by asking them to write questions and also what in the reading they connected to. We also ask our students to make 3 lists and add to them every day in their project notebooks. Something beautiful, something surprising, and something annoying. This gets them used to being aware of the world around them and noticing and naming it, skills that are important to an entrepreneurial mindset. Participants also asked how we might encourage students to be agentic. Again, this is a process which students acquire over time. Like weight training, the more you flex the muscle, the stronger it gets. I see this in my students who develop agency and a bias towards action, the more they employ and reflect on the 3 maker capacities. Thoughtful reflection, along with a language of thinking, can also help students develop habits of mind. You could use Agency by Design's Reflect, Connect, Project as a framework for students to capture their thinking and push them forward. It might help to break the capacities into various actions, as the maker moves do for us. This resource Julie shared in the last session, and I've included it again in case you missed it. Also, spoiler alert, there are some upcoming routines that will help students think about systems and the people involved in those systems and how the parts and peoples in the system affect one another. This helps students break complex systems apart, understand how the parts affect one another, and identify places to interject ideas or solutions. I've attached the resource from Out of Eden Learn that I mentioned earlier that might help you think about how objects live within systems and how students might look closely at an everyday object, in this case a pencil. And finally, I've attached Reflect, Connect, Project and the Artful Thinking resource about creative questioning. I hope you find some of these resources helpful. Let us know if they are, how you use them, and what other supports you need or thoughts and questions you have in the discussion under these videos. Thanks.